This is Hunt Nebraska, the official podcast for insight into Nebraska's hunting and shooting sports community. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, our space for sharing stories, information, tips, and techniques. Now, Hunt Nebraska. And welcome back, everybody, to the Hunt Nebraska cabin. We've got a good show for you today, so hopefully you're giving us a thumbs up, a big like, a follow on any of the audio platforms you might be listening to us, or, subscribe and give us a thumbs up there on Facebook if you prefer to watch us in action, which is kind of interesting that anybody wants to see us talk. But some folks are just that way. As you can see, we got some new faces in here. One in particular, we got the Kyle, the Hunter Ed coordinator here, Kyle Gaston, who is pushing buttons. He's behind mission control, making things happen today, making sure all this IT stuff works. Hopefully. Again, like we talked to the last one, we always go with the youngest member of our crew to make sure the podcast actually happens. We got Rachel Carlson, our shooting range coordinator, in the studio again. Me, Hershy. We're all three with the Nebraska Game and Parks, but we brought in one of the big guns, so to speak, from the Fish and Wildlife Service. And Jay, make sure I say this all right. Jay Ogawa, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Biologist, Office of Conservation Investment from Region 6. Did I get that all?
Yep, you got it right.
Oh, good. Well, I appreciate you joining us today, Jay. We're going to have a fun conversation here. You were in the great state of Nebraska a couple months ago. Was that your first time in Nebraska?
That was my first time in Nebraska. So it was a great visit with you guys, and got to tour a lot of the facilities with Rachel and Kyle. So it was a fun time. And
what he's talking about is he got to hang out with Kyle and Rachel and only put up with me for a little bit.
We had lunch.
That's right, which is important. It was important.
Important part of the day.
That's exactly right. So we've got some stuff we're going to cover here, folks, on funding and dollars and cents that you're going to want to listen to, because it's impacted hunters and shooting sports enthusiasts and recreationalists here in the state of Nebraska and beyond for many, many years. But before we get started on that, I've got a question, because this popped up. We've got the brand new, and I'm going to make that for those in the listening. There's the brand new issue, the Sound of a New Nebraska Land, October 2024 issue. And one of the first things that caught my eye, and I have not read any of this yet, Rachel, not one. I looked at the pictures though. Jeff Kurris, our very own Nebraska Land editor, on page 26 has the title of the article, Becoming a Snipe Hunter. Now, I want to know, have any of us been taken on a snipe hunt?
I feel like it's a loaded question a little bit here.
I was going to say plenty of figurative ones, but no literal ones.
Have you gone on a figurative snipe hunt? Have you?
I haven't gone on a figure. I've actually gone on a real one, but again, I was also a CEO for quite a while in the rainwater basin, so I knew where the snipes were actually around.
Snipes is such a weird word, isn't it? Snipes. Jay, have you ever gone on a snipe hunt?
I haven't.
You haven't? Now,
No.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in California.
So snipe hunting in the Midwest has always been one of those things you did to the younger members of your hunting team, your Cub Scout pack, your whatever it might be, the folks out there camping. It involved a gunny sack. It involved the story of having to, while you stand here with the gunny sack at dusk, while I go around to the other side of the campground or the forest or the field or whatever it is, and I will make some noise and chase them your way. And when those snipes come running out, and you will know what a snipe looks like because they are odd looking, when they come running out, you catch them in the gunny sack. And it's something that all the people that have been part of this group or team has done, and and everyone buys into it. And so as you're getting the idea is you go and drop this newest member of your group off with the gunny sack as it's getting darker, and then you go back to camp and just sit there and wait for their return, because the idea is there's no snipe. But folks, if you haven't done that, I actually got taken on a snipe hunt when I was first in Cub Scouts, and I still got the gunny sack to prove it. But there is actually a bird called the common snipe, and we do have them passing through here in the state of Nebraska.
You guys are going to have to try that out sometime or look it up. Google that. And you're smiling a little bit, but you didn't know that, Rachel?
I didn't know.
You didn't? Oh, my. So rite of
Didn't know
passage.
the actual.
I see it right there.
Yeah, right there's
Yeah,
the snipe.
there is a picture, and that's on page 27, and you can probably Google it or look for, do an image search. They are an interesting wading bird with a long bill made for grabbing, whatever bugs, macroinvertebrates that they can find in very shallow waters. And the rainwater basin is probably a really common thing. And of course, our resident hunter ed coordinator / former conservation officer has just pulled up the reg books here, Jay, and says we can hunt snipe September 1st through December 16th. I can't imagine there's a lot of snipe around in December. But that's not this year's.
That's not this year's.
What are you doing here?
So does the regulations speak to a specific size gunny sack that you're allowed to use for snipe hunting?
I think it does on the opening in the mesh, how deep the mesh is.
Yeah.
But it is actually kind of a challenging upland bird, if you want to call it that. It is a wading bird. You want to find it in the new
I'll
one.
get it figured out.
We'll make sure. I'm sure September 1st is when it opened up.
right,
Maybe it goes the same. What are the dates?
Yep, it's still September 1st to December 16th. Same dates.
All right, and how much snipe? Because I was told I could catch all that my gunny sack
you
would
gotta be
hold.
careful there. Bag limit 8. So 8 a day.
8 a day.
And then like anything else, 3 times the daily bag limits. And you do need to have your hip number. So there you go. These birds are MBTA protected.
And I know we've got some folks that have been out there. The gentleman that now works for Pheasants Forever, John Locks, was one of our access coordinators. He's chased them most years when he can have water or finds water in some of his hunting areas. I know some religious, very stout snipe hunters from Kansas that make a go of it. It's kind of an interesting hunt, unlike anything else. But that's not what we're here to talk about. But do check out the October issue of Nebraska Land. Some cool hunting stuff in there as well. We brought Jay in not just to talk about snipe, but talk about his position, because I think, Jay, there's folks that don't realize exactly how all this wildlife management and things like hunter education, how we're exactly funded. And I think there's some folks behind the scenes that don't get a lot of credit for what they do and the impacts that they have. So first of all, let's get to know Jay first and foremost. We started you off. We know that you're from California. And walk us through from California to where you are now, because your office is in the Region 6, which is in the Denver area.
Yep, we're in Denver. So I've been in this position for it'll be a year in October. But before that, by trade, I'm a fish biologist. So I grew up in Southern California, went to school in Northern California for fisheries biology. After college, I did a little stint. So it's kind of like a vacation / work experience job after college, where I worked at a hatchery up in Southeast Alaska. And then from there, I went to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in Northern California, working as like a research biologist there on the Klamath River. We were studying, there's all salmon there on the West Coast, so salmon species and then green sturgeon. From there, I went to Southern California, where I kind of switched gears and went from, the fun field work aspect to the regulatory side, working on ESA listed species. So in Southern California, it was Southern California steelhead, and then there's another population in South Central California, so kind of middle of the state there. So I did the NOAA job that was doing ESA work for about 12 years.
And when you say ESA, you're talking
Endangered Species
Endangered
Act.
species. So, yep.
Yeah. So like under that position, it was just reviewing a lot of projects that had potential impacts on listed steelhead species, steelhead populations. And so we were reviewing those, just trying to minimize effects to the species under the regs for the Endangered Species Act. And then we go ahead.
Well, I was just curious. So when you first thought about, I'm going to be a fish biologist, was salmon what you were wanting to work with? Was that the dream job?
I was one of those kids in high school that when I didn't really know what I liked to do. I knew that I liked to fish.
Okay. All right.
And that's kind of where it went from there, right? Where I kind of looked into, well, maybe I can be a fish biologist and started looking at schools that had good fish biology programs, and that's how I ended up at Humboldt State, which is a small school up in Northern California.
So what were you mainly fishing for?
When I was growing up, lots of fly fishing, trout mainly. And then when I moved up north for school, it was a lot of steelhead fishing.
Oh, wow.
Doing some offshore fishing for rockfish and albacore and then the ocean salmon season. So
all fish that we just can't, us Nebraska anglers, got one of those. Got one. No, we haven't. We've seen pictures of them for the most part, which I think is interesting. I was in Salt Lake City at a Shields store. I was like, oh, cool. I can't pass that up. I don't think I'm allowed to. So I walked in, and completely different fishing section than what we have here in Lincoln, Nebraska at our Shields stores. We're the Midwest. Sure. We've got catfish, largemouth bass, and then we also got some crappie enthusiasts and walleye enthusiasts, especially in the walleye world where you go a little bit further north or you get out by Lake McConaughey. But when I walked into that Utah Shields, it took me a while to get adjusted. I will admit, it's like, holy smoke, what are all these little flies for? What are we doing here? And that I realized, oh, that's right, I'm in trout country now. And you see that evolution, I guess you could say, from those middle states, trout fishing to get to the West Coast. Then you start seeing the salmon and more trout, but obviously a little bit more of that. So that's interesting. All right, so where did we leave your career? You were working with endangered species.
Yeah, endangered species. And in between there, I did a year with the tribe up in Northern California as a fish biologist.
That'd be cool.
And then after the regulatory job down in Southern California, we were one of those people that during COVID, we picked up and moved to Colorado. So we relocated. And then I was looking for work when we first moved out here. And when this position came up, it definitely struck an interest in terms of, what the program offered, what we'll talk about later. And so I applied for that and was fortunate to get that position. So yeah, I've been here for about a year and it's been really awesome. I mean, I think so far, one of the most enjoyable parts is just working with folks like you, like working with the state partners, right? Like getting to actually help out, and you guys do all the great work on the ground, and we're just there to try to help facilitate that with the funds.
Oh, sucking up to the states is always a good thing. It really is. We'll get into that partnership here pretty quick. So so we've got some things we want to hit you up about, and one of them, Rachel, I know impacts what we do here. In fact, that's how the three of us are actually reimbursed to the state as far as our position and a lot of our activities. Wildlife Restoration Act, which we got.
We've got a sign
the
for
Pittman Robertson Act, the Wildlife Restoration Funds. Here we've got the sign. Hold that up for that camera as well. I was gonna say, get that close. There we go. We're gonna have to get that posted back up here on the.
My arms are gonna get tired pretty fast if I hold it up the rest of the podcast.
Yeah,
but I'll do what I can.
I'll just stay like that.
Don't
do like that. It's perfect. It's not blocking me or anything. So, give us a little background on the Pittman Robertson or the Wildlife Restoration Act. It goes by both names.
It does. It started out as the Wildlife Restoration Act, and it was kind of spawned in the early 1900s. So there was there was a decline in habitat and then lots of overhunting. And so a lot of the state agencies kind of pushed for the act. And so it was a Nevada senator that was Pittman, and then the Virginia Congressman Willis Robertson. They kind of spearheaded the act, and it was signed into law in 1937. So initially, the initial act was just to restore wildlife populations and develop and manage some of the lands for habitat for wildlife. And we'll talk about the changes the amendments to the act that have kind of followed in recent years. But so it's been evolving since it first came in, since it was first signed into law in 1937. But yeah, it's been around for 80 plus years now.
I was going to say, so 1937, we'll be celebrating 100 years of it in 13 years, if my math is correct. So,
sounds like mathing's working.
That's well, thank you. That's pretty impressive. I used a calculator before I got in here. But it is kind of interesting. You think about what the country was going through in the 1930s, and we're kind of not yet seeing the full light at the end of the tunnel, but we're hoping for it. And to know, that was something that was going on across the nation, because of some of the we got a phone.
Distractions.
Hold on. We got
Distractions.
I'm just glad it wasn't mine. But, the depression, but the drought was causing a lot of that here in the Midwest, and loss of habitat when we were starting to see that in some of the critters because of it. Pretty impressive that some forward-thinking individuals, I don't even know if they realized what impact they were going to have, Jay, when they were going through this. They just probably saw what was happening during their time and said, let's do something about that. What can we do about that? Now, they couldn't foresee all this stuff and, like you say, modifications that we've made to it to help kind of tweak it here and there because of, again, almost 100 years ago now. So that's pretty cool. But it does. I mean, it's that act, and you guys are going to have to help me with this on how it's how it works. It's via excise taxes, not on everybody, but on folks that buy certain things.
So the excise tax is actually applied to the manufacturers. So the excise tax is applied to like ammunition manufacturers, firearm manufacturers, and then that also applies to the Dingell-Johnson Act. But we can also talk about that too later. But primarily right now we're talking about wildlife restoration funds.
We don't have the Sport Fish Restoration Act sign in here, Jay, so we'll make sure that we change that. But yeah, that was the anglers got jealous of what we had, and they wanted the same thing. He's bringing fish back in it. Do you guys notice that?
He does.
He brought fish right back into it.
It's hard not to. I'm a fish biologist, so it's hard not to bring up fish.
So, but you're exactly right. I mean, it's taxes that the manufacturers are the ones that write the check every year. They've got to do it. Is it semi-annually or quarterly?
I think it's annually, and so like rather than that money go to the Department of Treasury, it goes to the Department of Interior, right? And so then that money is what's allocated to the states, and there's a formula there that kind of determines what those allocations are. All I know is that it's mainly based on geographic size of the state and licensed hunters. So that's kind of how they calculate the allocations that get dispersed throughout the states.
And which is kind of cool. And those manufacturers oftentimes have to kind of forecast how much they think they're going to generate based on their sales and write that tax check ahead of actually selling the firearms, the bow, the arrows, and all the things that go into that. But it's made some huge impacts over the years. I just think like an agency like ours, where a good majority of the wildlife management and hunter education going on in our Nebraska Game and Parks Commission is reliant on those funds to be reimbursed and to use those to make things happen, building ranges, buying hunter ed manuals, doing our outreach efforts, working on habitat on wildlife management areas and things like that. So pretty darn cool to be a part of that and to see that happen. Now, you guys in your office have just undergone a name change as well.
Yes, yeah.
Now we're going to see. You were there for that, right? Were you the cause of the name change?
I think so. Yeah, I really pushed for it. No, I came on. I think within 2 months they changed the name. I think it was in February of this year, where we used to be called the Wildlife Sport Fish Restoration Program, and then it's now the Office of Conservation and Investment. So the name has changed over the years. I think initially we were called Federal Aid, and I think it's changed several times over the years, but now we've landed on Office of Conservation and Investment. But I mean, the WISFR still applies, the Wildlife Restoration, Sport Restoration, right? I mean, those are still two programs that that still do exist. It's just the name now encompasses more of kind of everything that we do within the program.
Well, and let's face it, Rachel and Kyle, we're state government, Jay's federal. We like to make acronyms. We like to make abbreviations. Yes. And when you use that WISFR, It's just like, what? And you kind of had to be on the inside to know exactly what that meant. It's pretty long. But at the same token, I think conservation investment, that's something that people probably remember a little bit quicker. Though I have seen it abbreviated CI already. So,
and that's we don't go by OCI. It's CI is the accepted acronym.
all right, we just need an S in there for the states or something like that. Then you guys can be CSI. Oh, and the Wayside, that's a TV show. So, a state like Nebraska, we talked about this. We use it, for a lot of our different programs. And folks, keep an eye open for those sport, fish and wildlife restoration signs. We've got some older ones that just say wildlife restoration on some of our wildlife management areas and shooting ranges. Those are funds that you've helped provide, because when you buy that equipment, hey, the manufacturer's got to make more. You go blue rock shooting, they're gonna have to make more shotgun shells. When you buy those, it helps out conservation, which is pretty darn cool. Those are your dollars, and you've helped get those here in the state of Nebraska. I at one time heard, and this is a little bit older, so this probably increased, that every license holder here, certified license holder for hunting permits in the state of Nebraska, means about $90 that comes back into the state through the Wildlife Restoration Fund grant system. So it's more than just that permit. It means a whole bunch, and it's one of those things that management and getting the word out and getting working from regulations, as well as all the interpretation education stuff that goes into that as well. It does cost a little bit of money. So neat program out there as well.
Just to add just some more statistics, kind of to follow up what you just mentioned. So last year there was roughly like $800 million nationally that was allocated for the Wildlife Restoration Fund. 180 million of that was put towards basic hunter education, and then 8 million goes to enhanced hunter education. And then within Nebraska, it was, I think, 1.8 million that was allocated for basic hunter ed and enhanced. So, it's quite a bit of funds there to work with and support a lot of you guys' programs.
So let's look at what we do from the state side. Again, we already mentioned the three of us. What we do and how we're paid comes through the wildlife restoration funds and the grants. So we write grants about things that we're trying to do. Hunter education. You've got what we call Section 4 money. So walk us kind of through how you
on the spot.
Yeah, I'm gonna put you because you know this well, Kyle. Yeah. The Section 4. You write a grant to do what?
Yep. So I write a grant to provide. The main focus is provide hunter education, something that's required in our state and about every other state here in the U.S. And so I got to provide pretty much all the materials, instruction aid, the training, the instructors, provide everything I possibly can to help this program keep moving, so that we have safer hunters out there, and also for the public view, they have the requirements to go out and hunt. So a lot of it's getting the teaching aids, getting the manuals figured out, but then the other part of it's going around training all the instructors, going around providing all the funds for that. So that's kind of the main section. That's the main focus, and then we also have some of our advanced hunter ed that fits into that, as well as a lot of the other continuing educational programs we could then offer.
And folks, one of the things, hunter education's changed. Like you said, manuals, and we still have those for the sit-down classes and things. The Hunt Safe sessions, now we've got an online option where you've got to do that hybrid online session and then in-person Hunt Safe session. We've got a vendor that we've got to pay so folks can get to that easily, register, and then that connects into our permit system. That has a cost to it as well. And for those 16 and above, you can do it all online, which again, online vendor, online program, registration system. So that all has a cost in there. And it doesn't all fall to the state of Nebraska because of the wildlife restoration funds. They help offset the cost,
right?
Which is kind of neat. And those volunteer hunter ed instructors, you collect hours from that, then we can claim as match to the federal grant, right, as well. Because your grant is 75-25.
That's correct. So that means every dollar we as a state essentially spends on hunter ed, the federal, so Jay's team will reimburse us 3 times the $3 to that one. Which is the easier way to explain. So, and we do a lot of that through our volunteer hours of our volunteer instructors are claiming their 1 hour volunteers were worth so much an hour. And that's how we're able to claim a lot of this. So that way we don't have to go into any of our taxpayer money, any of our license money. It's all coming through volunteer and through that. So it's a cool program knowing that our hunter ed is not costing any of our taxpayers or our licensed hunters anything to maintain this program because of the Sports Fish Wildlife Restoration Act.
And 75-25, pretty darn good. Now, Rachel, you can up that because of one of the modifications that Jay's going to probably talk about here in a bit.
Just a little bit. So with shooting sports, we have a 90-10 match. So for every $1 spent, we get $9 back from the feds.
Oh, that's even more impressive to do. Ranges, you've got some range projects you're working on. Our Archery in the Schools program, 75-25, that's in kind of that advanced Section 10 pool as well, and I've gotten to oversee that for several years now. So, Jay, then on the federal side, we're writing these grants and submitting reports and all that type of stuff, both interim and final. Where do you fit in that on the federal side? Are you getting to see some of our grants?
Oh yeah. So with my position, like one of my roles is the hunter education coordinator. So I talk a lot with Kyle, but yeah, all those grants that come across my desk, those grant applications that come across my desk, I'm reviewing them all, approving them, and then that goes to the fiscal side. But then that monitoring aspect of it too, yeah, I'm also reviewing those reports you guys are submitting, both interim and final, and just making sure the objectives that were proposed in that original application that I reviewed are being met. And so, yeah, I'm there from the very start of the review of the application, and then finishing out with approving all the reports.
You're kind of like the school teacher. Do you ever feel that way, where we submit a report or a request? Hey, teach, we want to do this, and you say, okay, that'll be a great project for you to work on, and then we got to send you the report. Do you get to see the final reports and the interim reports as well?
Yep. I see both the interim and the finals. I do. Yep.
All right.
And we love Nebraska. Absolutely. You're more than just looking at Nebraska. You're a region, so Region 6. So what all states do you end up dealing with?
Yeah, in our region, I have Wyoming, Montana, the Dakotas, Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, and Utah.
It's only 8 states.
I always get a kick out of Utah and
Utah.
Fine. So, I've submitted some grants and usually, or grants and the reports, and they just kind of like, okay, we've accepted them. I do like the idea of comparing your job a little bit to a school teacher. We're going to need to get you some stickers so that when we get a really good report turned in, and those are going to be the Nebraska reports,
of course,
guys. You can put a good job and all that type of stuff. That'd mean the world to us over here.
Okay.
Jay.
Maybe I'll send you an email with some emojis or something.
We'll just get some stickers here and say they're from you, Jay. We'll just put them on Aaron's desk.
Okay.
Well,
Scratch and
you just send Rachel or me a message, and we'll go put a sticker on Aaron for him when he gets a good job on one of his reports.
I am of the sticker generation, especially the scratch and sniff on the popcorn one was probably the best. But yeah.
There is one more program I know, like we were just talking about, like basic hunter ed, enhanced hunter ed, Tarmark, which we'll talk about later. But then there's also the R3, the multi-state.
Yeah.
Can't forget
that you probably, I think, maybe operate under or work with, right, Hershey?
Yeah. We kind of all hit on it a little bit, but yep. R3, recruitment, retention, and reactivation of our hunters and anglers and all that, and our shooting sports recreationists. So, yeah. So you get to see those as well.
Yep, I see those. I see all those.
Well, now we're gonna have to try harder, guys. Yeah, now that we know, especially if he's getting stickers, we're golden. So that's got to be a heck of a fun job. I'm sure there's a lot of neat projects and ideas. Some of those are pretty standard. Hunter education, there's been changes to it, and we've always got to stay up on that and the way we deliver it, the way where we meet people, because that's kind of changed how we've all collect information. Talking about doing an image search for common snipe. Who would have thought that would have been, at least when I was growing up, I didn't think that was possible. And now we can figure that out pretty darn fast. So which state is the best to work with? And we might bleep this out if you don't say the right word.
Probably the state that I visited recently. I think it was Nebraska. Yeah,
good.
Sure, Nebraska.
Good.
Yeah.
We don't have any
Yeah.
salmon. We do have trout. We do have cutthroat and some catchable rainbow. Brooks probably we're most famous for in the pine long pine area. That's what I'm trying to say. All right.
Yeah,
So
I mean, you guys are the first state that I have visited, and I've only been here for a year, but I mean, I was definitely impressed with all the facilities and obviously the staff. But it just seemed like you guys really, I mean, you guys have a really full staff in terms of having a shooting sports coordinator, someone that's working on R3, the hunter ed coordinator. I feel like, not having visited other states, but I felt like you guys had a really complete staff, and, that was awesome to see that.
oh, we appreciate the kind words. Not only do we have a decent number of us here and there, but we've got some of the best in those positions as well. So a little of the evolution, you kind of alluded to it, of what was the Pittman-Robertson, the Wildlife Restoration Act, some of those changes. We talked about the 90-10. That's probably the one I remember the most recent.
Yeah, that was the most recent. I think that was like 2019 or 2020. That was I just know it as TARMARK. The Target Practice and Marksmanship something Act.
Training Support
Rachel,
Act.
That's what it is. Yeah.
It's a long
that one
acronym.
came around, and then there was that Modernization Act too, which kind of encompassed that R3 stuff. But those were more recent. I think the initial act didn't really speak to hunter education activities, right? That was not an eligible activity under the original act, and so that was something that came around, I think, in 1970. I'm looking at my notes.
Hunter ed came around in 72.
The act evolves, right? I think that working with our partners and trying to see what other activities like states wanted to be eligible under the act is an open conversation, and one that it looks like in past it's something that they've considered and been able to modify the act. So there's the basic hunter ed, and then the enhanced hunter ed was another amendment as well. So I think as times change, I think there's going to be aspects of the act that evolve that allow some other activities be more closely looked at and considered for eligibility,
which is kind of cool. And yet the thrust of it, the main idea behind it, has been pretty resolute. In fact, the language is in there that doesn't allow it to be just pulled in for any reason at all. The big bad D word that we sometimes hear thrown around, we've never seen it here in Nebraska, but we know some other states have had to deal with it, that diversion. Because some people see, well, there's this pot of money over here for conservation, why don't we just take some of that and we'll go do this other thing that we want to do? Let's go use it for this area. We won't allow hunting or fishing in it, but by Jove, it's a neat little area, and or this project over here, and that diversion does not happen with this. And I think that's probably what's kept this from being, like you said, we've been able to modernize it from time to time and evolve it, but we haven't had it just completely disappear. Because I can't imagine what conservation and wildlife management would look like if we didn't have wildlife restoration funds.
Yeah, I think a huge, outside of the hunter education and those programs, under that Wildlife Restoration Act, a lot of what was done, the original intent was, I think, to buy a lot of land, right, to protect habitat and restore it. And that's, we're working on lands projects. That's another role that I have in my job now, is you see lots of records that date back to the mid 40s. So, states were certainly utilizing those funds back then to purchase land for the purpose of trying to restore wildlife habitat or fisheries habitat. And so I think that's been carried forward to now, right, where states are still continuing to do that, and that still plays a huge role in conservation. So it's great to see those dollars being utilized for purchasing land, and then also those funds are also being used to manage those lands as well. So the hunter education stuff is great, but also there's awesome contributions that I think those funds are going towards conservation.
Well, and that's one of the things that I find really elegant about the whole lack of diversion with this act, is that you can make long-term plans and have long-term management of all of those kind of lands and make sure that this is going forward for a long-term type project versus just being something that's year to year that you're just holding on by your fingernails.
Yeah. And that's part of that reporting stuff too, right? Is to make sure that what's proposed in those grant applications is being completed. And so that's kind of how we track, the success of the program is through those interim and final reports.
Amen. It's pretty awesome. It'd be, like I said, it'd be scary to see where we would be right now if it wasn't for this act and these funds. And I think what's kind of cool is of a lot of the evaluations and surveys and things we've looked into, the sportsmen and women and the recreational shooters and those that are involved in the shooting sports, very proud of realizing that what they do is having an impact through that system back into conservation, back into wildlife management. They're excited to know that is taking place. So what a legacy this has created, and the four of us are here obviously because of it. So we might be a little bit biased, but I think that it's always been one of those things that it's been set up as user pay, but everybody benefits because those wildlife management areas are open to everybody. Hunter education open to everybody, whether or not you decide to go to the field or become part of a trap team, whatever it might be. It's open and everybody benefits by that, kind of that old idea of all boats rise on a high tide, so to speak. So what amazing impacts out there. So now if you had the crystal ball, what's going to be our next big change? If any.
I don't know. I don't doubt there's going to be change, right? I think we're seeing that with Kyle, with hunter education, where, now in-person hunter education is an option, but I think a lot of the stuff is going towards online. So, there's going to be changes like that. I think that over time, there might be some things that we need to work out in the future, depending on how that kind of plays out with online hunter education. But it's things like that. It's like time's going to keep going. Things are going to change. And I think, working with the partners and listening to what you guys are seeing and it may result in more amendments. I don't know, but I think the key there is just that partnership, right? Like I think we have a good working relationship with the states, and like we hope, and that's the foundation of the program's success. It's not me providing, helping you guys get funds. It's the folks on the ground that are actually implementing all these good things. So we certainly listen to what you guys are seeing and potentially needing in the future, and that's I think what leads to those changes to the act. So crystal ball wise, I would expect change. I don't know when or what that might look like, but I think we're always here to help everyone out and help you guys out. And so we're always here to discuss any changes that you think might be forthcoming.
There you go. What about you two? You guys, Hunter Ed he might have nailed it right there. Cause I know with the pandemic, when we had to go to, all right, no more in-person programs there for a while. And yet the requirement to have taken hunter education before you hunt here in Nebraska for those 12 to 29 with a firearm or bow hunter education, 12 to 29 that are hunting deer, pronghorn, elk, bighorn sheep. Did I miss any? Was still in effect. So, it wasn't like, oh boy, especially as we came into the fall, we're just not going to let these folks that need it all of a sudden not hunt. We didn't want to see that happen because a lot of people did turn to the great outdoors and nature as a place to seek normalcy during a very unprecedented time. And they went there in droves to find some relaxation and stress relief. And we were able to step up to the challenge here in Nebraska. We were able to suspend a couple of our regulations and go all online for a short time.
Yep. So we were able to work our way through COVID like everyone else had to, and so we were able to create an online only option for the students, for everyone across the board. Whereas right now we were back to 12 to 15 year olds still have to have a hunt safe session, a 2-hour in-person classroom session after going online. So excuse me there. And then otherwise we've seen an increase after COVID of a little bit more hybrid courses, that hunt safe session. However, there's still a good demand of people still wanting that traditional classroom, still seeing those classes are still pretty full.
And we still believe that getting them in front of especially that key age demographic, getting them in front of the hunter ed instructor, the ones they can ask questions of is definitely important. But I know nationally, Jay, we've seen living up to that hunting is opportunity for all, that tenet, that there were more folks and a more diverse group of folks going to do the online than there was the in-person for probably a few different reasons. But some interesting stuff there, and who knows. The one thing that I've learned, and I've been in the conservation world for about 3 decades now at different levels, is we're always at an interesting time in conservation. I've never heard us sit back like, oh, these are the golden days. Nothing's changing. We're on the right track. Everything's good. No, it's always these are interesting times, and that might be the funding. That might be just drought. It might be that wildlife populations aren't where they are, or there might be too many of them, or different things pop up. So it really kind of is interesting and never a dull place to work, folks, is the natural resource world and this side of it to boot. Well, I know you're a busy guy, Jay, and I'm kind of out of questions, but I know these two right here probably have some for you. Before we lose Jay out there in Denver, and again, folks, we're talking with Jay Ogawa, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Biologist in the Office of Conservation Investment from Region 6, and we figured out all those. How many states do you oversee? 8
states. Yeah.
Oh boy, I never was good at geometry, so we'll have to get a map of that up there.
But Nebraska being my favorite state, though.
Well, we are the sticker state, so
I know what the headline is going to be on this podcast right now, just so you know.
Jay's favorite state.
Jay's favorite state. Region 6 favorite state.
It's all right, Jay. Everybody from the Fish and Wildlife Service agrees with that one, so yeah, that's a safe assumption. Oh boy, Rachel, what do you got for us?
What I got for you, Jay, is what are you looking forward to seeing next time you're in Nebraska?
Ooh.
Well, I wish I had more time, because I know you guys are going to have that opening for another one of the shooting ranges, right? A new facility.
We're hoping. We don't have any solid dates yet because they're still in that pre-construction phase.
And we don't know when you're available, Jay.
But I told you I would send you the dates for when we have some of our openings to see if you can make it. So just keep this in your calendars, guys. Save the date for whenever that date is. Special guest.
That could be the next time I visit is for that event. Mm-hmm. I feel like you took me all over the place, so I'm not sure.
I think we talked a little bit about this fall of trying to meet up somewhere in western Nebraska, maybe find a few pheasants flying around.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So we need to maybe find something. It doesn't always have to be all work to come to Nebraska. You can come here and actually enjoy the great outdoors that we have here,
that's true.
Money we're spending into the state.
As long as you're not going to send me out with a gunny sack looking for pheasants.
Aaron might do that. You got to be careful.
Well, yeah, I feel like you guys have been cheated growing up if you have not been taken on a snipe hunt. Well, I think that I'm starting to put some pieces together. So,
but that's why we left it open-ended, because I know that you were looking for some fishing possibly out here too. So, but maybe it's not as good as Colorado or California.
Hey, I'm always looking for fishing opportunities.
I'm going to say we've got trout, but they've got whiskers as well. and the bait you use is a little bit more aromatic, but they both have adipose fins. So, all right. All right, we're going to have to put a fork in it right there. We appreciate you joining us, Jay, and keep doing the good work and keep approving our grants.
Sure, no problem. I appreciate you guys having me on, and I look forward to coming back out there.
All right, guys, we're kind of at the end of this. Put a ribbon on it right here. We got to start making these a little bit more regular now that we are officially into the hunting season as we get to the end of September. And, the wonderful month that I dream about, October here in the state of Nebraska. Leaves will be changing colors. Some more birds will be migrating through. Pheasants will start coloring up, and those young roosters will start cackling a little bit more in the morning. It's going to be a wonderful October here in just a couple of days, to be honest with you. But until we meet again, we'll see you outdoors.
Hunt Nebraska, brought to you by your Nebraska Game and Parks Commission.